Cool Jobs Podcast.
You're like, where's Saskatoon?
Follow Cool Jobs Podcast on Instagram at Cool Jobs Podcast.
You know 10 NHL players.
The Cool Jobs Podcast is brought to you by Crown Jewel Recruitment.
Please tell me there's video. Is there video of this? If there is, we're going to insert some right here on the podcast.
Oh, we can do it live.
This is the Cool Jobs Podcast with your host, Jonny Jasno.
Okay, here we go. Another edition of the Cool Jobs Podcast. I'm so excited. He is right there. I cannot wait to talk to Kurt. First off, though, Cool Jobs Podcast brought to you by Mark Curtis at Crown Jewel Recruitment. If you're looking for a job, Mark and his team have opportunities in several industries and segments, whether it's finance, sales, engineering, supply chain, or executive. Mark is able to provide the process that identifies top talent and will get you hired. Check out all the job listings, crownjewelrecruitment.com, or search him on LinkedIn. I'm so excited to welcome Kurt Dahl, lawyer, drummer, lawyer. Kurt, I guess kind of what's your official title?
You know, just a cool dude, I guess.
Just a cool dude. That's awesome. I want to talk about everything. Kurt, obviously in the band One Bad Son, the drummer there. You have a whole entertainment lawyer business. You're a partner at the law firm as well. So we have lots to get to. I already know I'm going to have you back for episode 2 because like I've too many questions already. I know that already.
I love it, man. Well, I look forward to chatting, man. It's
Okay, sounds good. Let's start at the beginning. Music career, born, raised Saskatoon. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm born in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and but I've been in Saskatoon for like most of my life, and yeah, I'm a Sask boy.
So was music always a big influence in your world from your parents, or where did that come from? Where did that love for music come from? And then obviously drumming, that's a whole nother world because most guys pick up a guitar.
Well, I did that first, and I wasn't very good at it. So then I went to the drum. I found something that I was good at, which was drums. Although I wasn't that great to begin with on drums either. But yeah, man. So honestly, the love of music. I mean, I don't have like a very musical family. Like some houses, just people are singing and playing instruments and stuff. That wasn't the case for us. But my dad loved rock and roll, and I had all his vinyl records in the basement, right? So I grew up on Led Zeppelin, Hendrix, The Who, all the greats that I still consider my favorite artists and the biggest influences, right?
Right.
So, you know, I think it was like, you know, when I was really young, I'd play the occasional record here and there, but then once I got to high school, that awkward, you know, phase of your life, which is high school, you know, I really found rock and roll, and that changed my life. And part of that was having grown up on Led Zeppelin, but then early 90s, all the amazing stuff coming out of Seattle. So
absolutely,
you know, like Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, those 4 bands changed my life without a doubt. And I wouldn't be like you said, the lawyer, drummer, lawyer, whatever you want to call me. I would not be that. I wouldn't be the person I am today if not for like that Seattle grunge scene. So I think that was like, once I got hooked on Pearl Jam, especially, and then Nirvana and Soundgarden were close seconds. I mean, like it just changed my life. And that's when I became a musician.
That's awesome. I remember in grade 7, a buddy of mine brought in a Nirvana CD and he goes, guys, we need to listen to this. And we're like, what's this? He put it in the CD player and we couldn't stop staring at what was coming out of the speakers because we never heard anything like that ever. And like you said, the influence that had on so many people across the globe to get you behind the drum kit and going, like that's pretty cool stuff. In high school for you, was it like, oh, we should create a band and we should play music? Did you have a bunch of bands in high school and do talent shows and that kind of stuff? Or where did the band stuff kind of start?
Yeah, great question, Jonny. So yeah, I was sort of a late bloomer musically. So I wasn't, like you said, so many people played music from a young age or had bands throughout high school even. No, that wasn't the case for me. I got sort of bit by the bug of Seattle grunge in like grade 9 and 10. And then, you know, just obsessed with that sort of music. But it wasn't until grade 12 that I was like, I should be a musician, right? So I picked up the drumsticks in grade 12, which is by most people's standards is pretty late, you know?
Right.
And, you know, picked up the sticks, grade 12, got a cheap drum kit, and guess what? I sucked, you know, like, so I thought I could play like Pearl Jam or play like, you know, Led Zeppelin.
Were your parents so unimpressed? Like okay, there's a drum kit in the house. They're super loud. Neighbors are going to complain. And then number 2, okay, he's not very good.
Yeah, exactly. Where's that talent we were hoping for? Honestly, my parents were great. Like, and I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have kept doing it if they weren't supportive, right? Like they were, and any parents of drummers are the most patient people in the world because, being a parent of a guitar player, I mean, sure, they can crank the amp up a bit, but it's not nearly as abrasive as drums, especially when drums are being played poorly, right? So for me, and that was kind of my story, I guess, is I didn't care that I sucked. And this is a lesson to all the young musicians out there or old musicians that are new at it. It's like, it doesn't matter if you, no one's great right away. There's the occasional exception. There's the occasional, virtuoso, brilliant, genius. But the other 99.5% of people aren't good at the beginning, right?
Everybody starts at zero.
Yeah, and that goes for almost anything in life, right? Yep. Even the Beatles, like McCartney said, we weren't good at the beginning, but we just played it so damn much, right? And that's how it was for me. I mean, I played drums, and what I would do, and I didn't want to do the drum lessons. I tried a couple lessons and didn't like them, right? It was really boring, the mechanics of drumming, the left, right, left, right, left. I was just like, this is boring.
I only know that pattern. That's the only pattern I know. And I don't know how to cruise around and get back to it. I just stay there for 10 minutes. I'm like, okay,
I don't know what else. Stay in the pocket. Yeah. It's honestly, and for me, that was, so my drum lessons, how I taught myself was I put on headphones. I bought these special headphones that you could sort of isolate the sound.
Okay.
And, I plugged into my record player and put on, Pearl Jam 10 or David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, or I couldn't do Led Zeppelin early on because that was just too effing tough, but I played along these records. So I'd play along to Alive by Pearl Jam. And the first time I did it, I sucked. But then I did it for, 5 days straight, for 5 hours a day. And eventually I could play the song. Right. And, so that's how I learned. Cause I felt like taking lessons is one thing, but playing along with my idols is a whole other thing. And it's a lot cooler. Right.
Oh, totally. And I've said this before too. I took guitar lessons for years. And my guitar teacher was always making me do scales, dun, 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 dun. And I'm like, come on, I just want to rip. I want to do solos. Yeah. I want to do cool stuff. I don't want to do scales.
Yeah, I think everyone learns differently, but I would guess most kids don't music lessons aren't very fun, right?
Right.
And sometimes it's not always supposed to be fun. Sometimes it's hard, but for me, at least with drums, I could play along, and that was a real gift, So then,
that's awesome.
To get back to your when did you form a band sort of thing?
Yeah, so what was One Bad Son your first band?
No.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, a couple bands before that. So, I learned all the mistakes ahead of time and then had that out of the way before One Bad Son.
Okay.
No, but really it was just did that for two, like I said, I sucked for 2 years. So, and in the grand scheme of things, 2 years is nothing looking back as a 41-year-old. I'm so glad I pushed through those 2 years. But at the time, those 2 years felt like eternity because I wanted to be as good as Keith Moon, after 2 months, right? And what just wasn't the reality. But I think and I teach this to my kids all the time. It's you're always going to suck at something when you first try it, right? Whether you're trying to paint a picture or, do a sport, most people aren't good right away. And that's the key to life. The key to life is persistence and working your ass off and then just not caring if you suck. Right. And so for me, I gladly kept playing and eventually started to suck less. Right. And then, so by the time I actually hit the stage, I was good, and, it just took a lot of hours in the basement. Right.
So first band, was that a cover band then?
No, thankfully I've never been in a cover band, which is
really,
I shouldn't say thankfully. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but I've just always been lucky that I've been able to play original music, right?
Yeah.
And I think some people don't get that chance. You sort of get in a cover band situation or whatever, and it's hard to, if all you learn is covers, it's hard to all of a sudden start writing your own music, I think. So anyway, so for me, it was the first band was called The Mother Culture. We were a pretty big band in Saskatoon. We'd sell out local venues that are say 400 people.
Cool.
And it was mostly our friends and family who showed up, but they became fans too. And we had kind of a Chili Peppers meets Pearl Jam kind of vibe, and
cool.
It was great. We did a little bit of touring, and then as young bands do, we imploded, and then had some other bands, and it's sort of. that's around that time I went to university, and that's when the sort of the academic side of my life started. And then pretty soon, I mean, that was 5 years after I graduated high school is when OBS started. So it wasn't that long after.
Right.
Really.
Right. Now, when you went, like, was that your plan B, to be a lawyer in case the music thing never worked out? Or were you just like, I like doing this and I like playing music, so I'm going to kind of do both? Like, where was the back and forth there?
It's interesting because people always say, like, it's a great plan B. People always said that along the way, right? And
you're like, but I just like it.
Yeah, like, honestly, I didn't look at it like, I never actually, and this maybe sounds crazy, but I never thought that I wasn't going to make it as a musician. Like, I was so perhaps naive, right? Like,
right.
And I think that sort of naivete really is what gets you through being all the tough times, right? Like, when OBS started, it was 2004.
Right.
You know, I thought that we were going to get a record deal within like weeks, you know, and turns out it took us, our big breakthrough was like 8 years later, right? And we didn't get our first number one until 2018, so 14 years later, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all about perspective. And I think had I known it would have taken us 14 years to break through like that, I would have been like, no way I'm going to do that, right? So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I have so many questions. So when One Bad Son started, did you guys start the band on purpose to record music and going after that record deal, or was it just for fun and it just kind of happened?
Yeah, good question. I think we all had sort of delusions of grandeur to some extent. Like, we wanted, like, in a good way, we wanted to be like the biggest band in the world, you know? So
right.
I wouldn't say it was as innocent as let's just have fun. You know, like, we're like, let's become massive rock stars like that.
Let's take this serious and go.
Yeah. It was like, but it was fun, but it wasn't like we wanted to become the biggest band in the world, you know? So, and around the time, so that's when I started to go to law school around the time OBS was formed. OBS actually formed, I was halfway through law school. And yeah, like, to your question, like plan B, that sort of thing. I think I always thought I was going to make it as a musician, or I just knew that I was going to be in the music biz in some form. And the reason I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer was that I read so many rock and roll biographies over the years, you know, and like, that's all I read growing up, right? Like, that was my education.
I love bios. Yeah.
Like, I feel like I know, like, I feel like if I ever do like rock and roll Jeopardy, it's like no one beats me, right? It's just like, I know it all, right?
Nice.
That's just my kind of what I find interesting, you know. I remember those kind of facts more than I remember like my kids' birthdays, you know. And so I'd say don't tell my wife, but she knows that very well. So so like, I just thought, anyways, I read these bios, and the common thread through all of them was that the musicians got screwed over by someone in a suit, you know, either,
right.
You know, usually a record label, but it could be a lawyer, it could be a manager, whatever. Right. So I just thought I wanted to be, and again, this is sort of that, it sort of, I guess, captures the naive sort of wide-eyed view I had then. I think I still have it to some extent, is like, I want to protect artists, you know. I don't want my band or any of my friends' bands to be screwed over, right? So I was like, if I could be the long-haired entertainment lawyer that is the cool guy that protects the bands, that'd be awesome. And like, and as crazy as it sounds, like, that's what I've become, right? So it's like
nuts. You
know, I often sometimes look back, I'm like, holy shit, like, I actually, like, what I had in mind, I actually became, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where the seed was planted, like protecting artists, and at least, and somewhat selfishly protecting myself too as a musician, right?
When you guys got signed, I think it was to 604, correct?
Yep.
Was that how big of a deal was that? And two, you're like, we got it made now. We got a record deal with was it with Chad Kruger, right?
Yeah, well, he's a part owner, yeah.
Oh, he's part owner of 604. Okay, so, but
yeah,
Nickelback, huge. We're on the label. Let's go.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things you realize that it's not as epic as.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, like, or you realize that it's like we got signed and then the real work just starts, right?
Okay.
Like, it's not like, you know, you don't get a big advance that's gonna like
the money truck isn't coming, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no limos. There's no limos full of champagne and cocaine.
Grammys aren't happening right away. Nothing.
No. So it's like, the reality was like, you know, here's your record deal, record. Like, it was a great big moment. We're like, okay, we got a record deal. Like, that's, you know, like 1% of artists get that or whatever.
Yeah.
But then it's like, now we got the real work starts, right? And that's where you realize, I think this goes for everyone in the music biz, like to really break through and have a success and maintain it, like it takes so much sacrifice, right? And so around that time, like we just, like that was our lives, was the band. Like we jammed 5 times a week for hours a day, and hardly saw our partners and whatever. And
right.
I mean, I couldn't imagine doing it now with kids and stuff, like and being on the road all the time for months on end without seeing my wife. And we just got married. Like, so there's all these things that people don't, it's like to become a big rock star, it's like, it's a lot of sacrifice. Right. And that's so, and we gladly did it at the time. That's what was like, we wanted to become the biggest band in the world. Right. But it wasn't like this, like, okay, we made it, now let's sit back. It was the opposite.
Right. So how many records, like when you sign a deal like that, is it really detailed in terms of you need to make this many records, you have to tour for so many days, we're going to give you this much money and just make it work kind of thing? Or, and then they're going to help you out with production and all that kind of stuff. Like what's the structure when it comes to signing with a major label?
Yeah. And that was interesting too, because of course, I negotiated the deal for us, which was like,
awesome.
It was like, I was way younger then. I was way newer in my career as an entertainment lawyer. So there's things now that I would have been way more of a hard ass on, in terms of the label. Right. But I think also the time you just get a deal and you're a new lawyer. I wasn't going to like start to be like, you don't want to ruin the relationship either. Right. With the label. So it almost would have been better if we just hired someone outside, but it's all good. It worked out fine. But, it was like 3-record deal. They didn't touch touring. So touring wasn't a part of like the deal. And yeah, I mean, like they commit certain dollar amounts, and we recorded like at some of the biggest studios with some of the biggest producers, like for those 3 records. So, it was a lot of money spent. Right. And yeah, I mean, from there, a bunch of music videos and pushing songs to radio. And, it all happened, fairly quickly. And looking back, I mean, it's sort of a whirlwind, really. It's like we spent so much time on the road. It's like we'd tour, come home, record a record, have a bit of time with family, go back on the road, And I think that's where, thankfully, none of us got caught up in any issues that most musicians or a lot of musicians get caught up in, like drugs and alcohol. We kept it pretty straight and narrow. But you see how it can happen, right? The road is just, it really wears people down, right?
What was that like touring all over the world and being that far away from home all the time? Because I'm sure the first couple nights on a tour, that must be like, you're pumped, you're ready to go. And then how soon does it get old, I guess is the question. Does it,
yeah,
and you're
like, well,
it's same song, same set list. And you're like, now where are we? Nashville. Okay. What's tomorrow? Okay. We're over Tennessee. Like, does it get repetitive and boring?
The playing never does. Like the song, the shows. I mean, at least not for me. I think for some artists it has. Right. There's some people just actually don't enjoy being on stage. And for me, as Flea said, it's like it's the 1 hour. Like it's the other 23 hours a day that are kind of shitty, but it's the 1 hour on stage is the greatest thing in the world. Right.
Right.
It's just the other 23 hours you have to get through. Right. And I think so. The music, like playing a show, like doesn't matter. There's so many times, when we had 0 sleep, and it's not exactly just from partying, it's just from the reality. It's like you play late, you have to get up early and drive 8 hours to the next venue. Like you have to, the most you can get is 2 hours of sleep. There's so many times you're going on that sort of schedule for a few nights in a row. And then like you the second you hit stage, you feel no pain. Right. And it's just like, it's the best feeling ever. But I think as far as like leaving home is great. And then like, do you get sick of it? It's like leaving home is the best feeling, like when you're starting on tour, and then coming home is the best feeling, right?
Right.
It's and I think it's how much time has to elapse between those two things before you start to feel like you want to come home, right? Like I think in the early days, I was like, we'd go out, we just knew we had to do it. But there were times when it's like, I remember one year, like I hardly saw my wife. Like she would be in Saskatoon or Vancouver, and I'd be on the road. I'd come home, have a few days off in Saskatoon, but she'd be in Vancouver. And it was like, like you can't, like, it's amazing that we got through it, because most relationships would have failed, right? Like you can't really have that connection, that intimacy if you're not around the person. Like a quick phone call every couple of days or even every day.
Did she ever join you on the road, or was that just nobody brought there?
I mean, no, because you can't really, unless you're Paul McCartney and you've got like a slew of buses. It's like we're in a van and a trailer, and like we can't afford to have another hotel room, and like
right,
and it's all work. I would never want to bring my wife on tour.
I think that's a big misunderstanding, because as soon as you hear record deal, we think, boo, and touring, and like you got everything. You got the big, huge buses and everything. But the reality is, like you just said, van, trailer, and hotel rooms are expensive, and that's all comes out of it, right? Yeah,
I think people would be surprised, like, and people don't really care. I mean, they want to be entertained, and that's all good.
Yep.
Like, they don't understand, and how could they? But I think very few bands actually get to the bus sort of level, right? Like we were starting to get towards that level after we had like a number one song and that sort of thing. But then you realize, like, if you have a bus, like it's a lot of overhead, right? So if you're going to be touring in a bus, like I think it's $1,000 a day, I believe. So for a month tour, that's $30,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of money, right? And
I
think that doesn't even include like additional gas, which gas is crazy, right? So and especially these days, right? So it's like, to get to that bus level, some bands go there even if they can't afford it, but they just want the luxury of it, and then they lose money on a tour, right? But anyways, I don't want to get into touring. Mathematics is not the sexiest subject, but
all good. Let's talk about, you open for Def Leppard, Shinedown, Judas Priest, The Stones. Come on,
bucket list for sure.
Did you get to meet anybody from do you get to hang out with the Stones pre or post? Or
no, I tried. So I tried my best, and I was a bit of a fan, but like, I don't fanboy very easily, but for the Rolling Stones, like, to me, I'm almost lucky I didn't meet them, because I would have just like been a complete loser, like I'd have been, like, I wouldn't be able to have words, but.
So no words to Mick, nothing, zero?
No. So I tried, like, so what happened was I kept trying to like get to the.
This is in Regina, right?
No. This is in Ontario.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Not the Regina show. I was at that show. It was awesome. But
okay.
So this was like, I talked to some backstage guy. He's like, talk to the head of security. So I go to security, and like, it's like CIA level security. Like, these guys are, awesome black suits with guns in their hips. Like, it looks like straight off of almost like the Matrix, like the guys in Matrix, and I got to the head of security, and I was like, dude, like, I grew up on Stones records. Like, I listed all the records that like changed my life, and the guy's like, okay, you're a fan, big deal. I was like, no, but I'm in one of the opening bands. Like, can I just like meet Keith Richards and shake his hand, and I'll settle for Mick if he's around too.
Anybody.
Yeah. And he's like, kid, you seem like a nice kid, but like, let me tell you something. Keith Richards, and this made me laugh, because it was like, how do you respond? But he's like, Keith Richards has met everybody he needs to meet in this lifetime. And so I was like, well, fair. I mean, like, I guess I'm not.
You're like,
but
I haven't. Yeah. Oh, so how many people were in that stadium that you played for?
It was a big field. It's like,
okay.
They built it for this. It's like a big, massive like farmer's field sort of, but I think they said 70,000, which is kind of crazy. And
is that so? Obviously, that's your most, like 70,000. Like, come on.
Yeah, there wasn't that many when we played at.
Sure,
but
we'll say 70,000.
Yeah, playing. Yeah, exactly. Round it up. Opening for Def Leppard was cool. Like, that was our first arena tour, and
okay.
Probably like that's probably one like I remember the most, because it was our first arena tour, right? And like I said at the outset, we always wanted to be the biggest band, and like I think we always made music that was meant for an arena, How many shows did you do with Def? I think it was all the major cities in the West, like from Winnipeg West. So I think it was 8 shows or 9. And it was, I felt like, again, just like a sort of a kid in a candy store. Like, I was just so happy, and like had this big smile on my face the whole time.
When you're doing that, is it like going from the minors to the majors? And I'm going to use a sports reference here. So like, in the minors,
analogy,
you have to carry all your own equipment, this and that, everything else. But when you get to the NHL, that's all done for you. Is that what it's like when you're doing that? All your drums are done, they're tuned already, they're ready to go, everything's good. Is it like that?
I like that analogy, Johnny, but it's right. It's correct. Like, we went to the majors, except we still had to load our gear in and tune our drums and stuff. So it's like we were the amateur, like we were the guy getting called up from the minors in baseball who can pitch better than everyone else, but still like has his old beat up glove or something, you know, and still can't afford to have a massage therapist or something, you know, but it was cool. I mean, in some ways it was cool because one time we pulled up and Def Leppard had like 8 buses, right, of all their stuff and their people, and they were just getting out of their buses as we pulled up in our van and trailer, and it was cool because Joe Elliott, you know, the singer, he and I had a good chat one night. Like, he likes good wine like I do, and he likes, you know, so much classic rock like I do. Like, he loves Mott the Hoople and you know, the Kinks and stuff. So we just talked music and wine, which I could talk that stuff all day. Anyways, he was walking out and he saw us pull up in this van and trailer, and he was just like, and the juxtaposition against 8 massive buses and then our little dinky thing, and he just laughed, and you could tell he was looking at us like, you know, we were there once too, right? It's because even at that level, I mean, like, they were there at some point, right? They probably were there for like only a few months and then they blew up, but you know, they can appreciate the hard work that's going into it, right?
So do you, on a daily, when you're on a tour with them, is it you're hanging out with those guys lots, or is it just you see them once in a while kind of thing? Yeah,
you want to respect their space, because I'm sure the last thing they want is the opening band to be like sort of annoying and sort of cloying. But so mostly, no, like if you get a chance to talk to them, it's like you take it. And so one time Joe was walking by, I was like, "Hey Joe, like I hear you're a fan of Mott the Hoople," I said, and he's like, "Oh yeah," and like he sort of stopped in his tracks, because at first he's probably just gonna. I'm guessing most opening bands asked to get a selfie or something, right? And I didn't even do that. I talked music, we talked wine, and that was it. No selfie. But so at first he was kind of like, he didn't want to talk, and then I said, "I heard you're a fan of Mott the Hoople," and he just stopped in his tracks, and we started talking about.
You found common ground.
Yeah, like just talk like real people, right? Like cool. That's what I mean. I saw this cool thing on Instagram yesterday with Jim Carrey. He's like, I snap on people that ask for a selfie. He's like, I want to have an actual human interaction with you. Like, I'll talk about Robin Williams with you, but I'm not gonna get a selfie, and I love that, right? Like, like have a real human interaction, right? Not,
and you're gonna remember that way more than that selfie on your phone that you're gonna delete or lose or whatever, right? So
or you post it to make it feel like you're
right.
You really had an interaction with him, but you didn't, right? And it's more about your own ego, right? And so, anyways, I think in general, so you appreciate these moments when you get the chance to chat. So Def Leppard, that happened. And then I ran into the drummer one day and I was like, "Hey man, I love your drumming and stuff." He's like, "Hey, come check out my kit." So he brought me on stage and showed me all the foot triggers, right? Cause obviously he's the one-armed drummer.
Yeah.
It's like, he showed me all these triggers, and it's like, it was kind of cool. Like, he walked through like his drum kit and kind of explained everything to me. And he's like, I got to hop on it and play and stuff. And, cool. Or there's moments where it's like, with Judas Priest, we got to meet Rob Halford, and, again, he came to our dressing room, which was like crazy. He came to us and he knew our names, which was also crazy. Cause like, he didn't owe us that at all.
Right.
He obviously went on Wikipedia, found our names, and walked into our room and introduced himself and called us by our names, which is like I can't think of a greater sign of respect, right? Like,
cool.
I didn't know his bandmates' names. I just knew his name, right? And, and that was cool. So we had a 5-minute conversation with like one of the greatest singers of all time, right? And those moments you really just cherish.
Speaking of drummers, Taylor Hawkins, Foo Fighters, just passed away.
Yeah, so sad.
Man, crazy. Did you ever meet him, I guess, ever in your musical world? And then B, just maybe, I saw you had a nice post of him on social. Maybe just go over that again, because that was just awesome. Yeah,
I never met him. I would have loved to. Like, I think with people like that, it's like, I never met him, but I felt like I knew him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, to me, that's one of the best compliments I can give to like a celebrity, right? It's like, he just felt like someone that I would have loved and would have been a bro with, and always just brought that's like, people always say that, or people have said that I smile too much on stage, right? Like, I'm having too much fun, because to be in a rock band, you can't be smiling too much, right?
Right.
Which I think is bullshit. But fair enough. It's like, I have so much fun on stage, and I think that's the vibe I always got from Taylor too, right? It's like, he was just like he was in the moment, living so presently and so much joy on stage. And yeah, it's just so sad. I mean, I think, you realize how anytime one of these rock stars dies, it always hits me because like you realize A, how fragile life is in general, but also B, how they don't make rock stars like they used to, right? Like, you know,
Exactly.
when Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young die, I'm going to be like, or Paul McCartney, like it's something that's really mourned because they're not making them like that anymore, right? There's good musicians out there, don't get me wrong, but it's just like they're from a different era, right? And that era, when they die, it almost like it makes me just feel like sad for that sort of era that, you know, pre-internet, pre-social media, where rock and roll was king, right? That's, to me, that's the era that is the greatest, right? Like
you had to gather around the radio to hear it come on because it wasn't even coming to record stores for a while, right? So it's like,
and just like, and just the way that at the time when rock and roll really, I think it really impacted the culture in a way that I don't think it does anymore, right? Like, sadly, like I wish that it did, but you know, rock and roll it's like hip hop has a way bigger impact on the culture now, and that's fine. It's just that doesn't appeal to me as much, right? I'm a rock and roller to the core, right?
The Cool Jobs podcast is brought to you by Crown Jewel Recruitment.
Hi there, Mark Curtis, Managing Partner, Crown Jewel Recruitment. We are very excited to partner with the Cool Jobs podcast. A little bit about us. We specialize in mid to senior level management positions, all types of industries. We also have entry level all the way through to executive suite. If you'd like to learn more, please check out crownjewelrecruitment.com.
Like Cool Jobs Podcast on Facebook at Cool Jobs Podcast.
Okay, want to switch gears.
Yeah.
Your whole other world, entertainment lawyer. Man, this is just, I did tons of reading on you ahead of time. I can't even imagine what you read in a day and what you have to face in a day, because I'm sure so many bands, artists, whatever, have so many, maybe even actors. Like, I don't know how far it goes. Is it just strictly music, or do you go across the board with entertainment?
Yeah, no, I do. I go across the board. I mean, music is the focus, but I've got some actor clients and some filmmaker clients, that sort of thing, and models and authors, that sort of thing. But I mean, obviously I'm known in the music biz, and that's my passion really, is, you know, that kind of work. But yeah, mostly musicians, record labels, managers, all that stuff, right?
So let's just run through a scenario. So I'm going to get signed to whatever label, and if I don't get this checked out by someone like you, I'm probably going to get screwed, correct?
Well, I mean, you know, and the reality is, like, I think there's two kinds of people in the music biz. There's some of the most amazing, intelligent, gifted, generous, you know, kind people in the world, and intelligent, like, and the other type are like the sharks, right? The sharks that want to rip off artists, right? And from my experience, it's probably 50-50 in terms of the ratio. So I guess that's either good odds or bad odds.
That was one of my questions. How many artists do you think right now are screwed in their contract? Like, what percentage?
Well, you know, and so I guess what I think is that some people are intentionally trying to screw artists, like the contracts are just intentionally just horrible. Right. And then some either got a crappy lawyer to draft it or didn't get a lawyer to draft it, so it's just not actually clear, or it could just be ignorance. Like, they don't actually know that the deal is actually really bad for the artist. Right. So they may not have the intent of really harming the artist, but that could still be the intent. So I would say, I think the common thing, I just say, like, don't sign a deal without having someone look at it that you trust, right? Get an entertainment lawyer that you trust, and like, send it to me, and I'll send you back my thoughts. And I'm not going to, like, I'll tell you the quote before I charge you anything, right? Like, yeah. You know, like, people think if they send me something, all of a sudden they're gonna get a bill in the mail. That's not how it works, right? Like, you will know what it's going to cost before any steps are taken. But it's always like, whatever it's going to cost, it'll save you 100-fold that over time, right?
What's the number one issue you see in contracts that are going to artists or bands, like that you see it every time, and these guys are trying to not screw them, but like, you see it all the time. You're like, that doesn't need to be like that. What's the number one thing you see?
Good question. I mean, it depends on the contract, right? There's like record deals versus management deals versus publishing deals. But but I think a common misunderstanding right now, I'd say, Jonny, is, you know, like, understanding all the different revenue streams out there, because there's a lot of money sitting out there that's like literally sitting out there waiting for someone to claim it, whether it be artist or label or whatever. And it's because, like, artists don't know it's there a lot of times. So a good example is like Sound Exchange. So every time your song is spun on satellite radio, you get paid through Sound Exchange, and Sound Exchange has like millions of dollars that's unclaimed right now because artists haven't signed up for it. So a common mistake in deals is that some labels will try to take all the sound exchange, and they shouldn't. Like they can only get half if they own the master, right? And then sometimes they don't get any if they're not like if it's not a full on record deal. And I won't get into the details, but it's like there's a lot of sort of confusion when it comes to the different revenue streams out there now, because it's not just record sales anymore, right? Like that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
But these days, so I think a lot of labels offer deals and they don't even know that they're either, they're messing up essentially on the revenue streams,
Crazy. And then does that go into YouTube as well? In terms of
YouTube, generates a decent amount of money especially if you have a song that goes viral, right? Like the Dead South is a good example. Like they're clients of mine, and their video, I'm not sure how many million views it's at now, but like they made a ton of money from YouTube, right? And then obviously that was parlayed into like massive touring guarantees and schedules, right? So
would that be in the contract from the label saying if you're going to make X amount of money on YouTube as well, we're going to take X percentage?
Well, usually, yes. And usually the label will pay for the creation of those videos, right? So
okay.
Like the label pays for it, they own it, right? Same with One Bad Son. We've got, a dozen videos on YouTube that we don't own them, right? It's owned by the label.
Right.
So they get all the revenues.
Crazy.
Yeah, they get all the revenues from that. And then if we recoup, which we haven't recouped yet, as in we're not out of the red yet, then we get half of those revenues, but we're not recouped, right? So
what? Oh man, that's crazy.
So
it's a whole weird world.
If you go buy our songs on iTunes right now, like nothing comes to us. It all goes to our label because we're still unrecouped, right? Which, that's just how it is, right? So OBS, we make our money from touring, right? Like that's, yeah.
And would you say majority bands, artists, whatever, make their money from touring?
Yes, but it's so interesting now that with TikTok, the whole industry has just been flipped on its side. Like I've got clients that are so big on TikTok and they make enough money from playing in their bedroom on TikTok. They don't need to tour. How
do they make money on TikTok?
Great question. We could do a whole thing on this, but
give me the Coles notes and then we'll do that in episode 2. But the Coles notes, how would you make money on TikTok?
Well, first off, if you become an influencer, and I hate that term because for me it's like, but there is some positive influencers, but for me, my general connotation with influencers is negative, right? It's like someone who's like a beauty queen or something. And it's just like, are you actually like contributing to the world or not? And I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but, it's like influencers, they get paid, right? So a lot of times so if you're a musician and you get enough followers, companies will pay you to be wearing their shirt or plug Pepsi or whatever, and you get paid, which kind of maybe seems like selling out to me, but whatever. Or just, you just run, like if you got millions of followers, which actually happens to a lot of people, you do like a Patreon thing where you're like, I'm playing a concert tonight and here's a link on my page, donate whatever you want. And if you're a big enough artist, you could make 10 grand that night, right? Or more. And so then why go on tour if you could make that just from your bedroom, right? And then there's other ways too. I mean, ultimately it usually kind of spills over onto the other formats, right? So
would you be in on those deals then for like, would your client come to you and be like, hey, I have this client or this person, Pepsi, whatever.
Yeah.
They want me to wear their stuff. Can you draft up the contract for that? Like, is that where it's going now?
Yeah. I mean, I do those deals for sure. It's like, I call them influencer deals, right? And yeah, I do them. Is it where it's going? I think to some extent, yes, but I don't think that's going to like totally replace the traditional music biz. Like,
okay.
But it's mostly like, I've got some like model clients that like, they get these kind of things. It's like, if you post about our earrings, we'll give you like $5,000, and so, cause if it reaches 1 million people, like that's easily worth $5,000 to them. Right. I mean, so it's interesting to say the least. Like, I think that I'm not like overall, I think my big picture sort of thoughts is that I don't like how much time young kids or adults spend on their phones. Right.
Oh yeah.
And TikTok really just makes it worse, I think. So, but that's a whole other discussion, I think.
So yeah, like even as a band, you're getting popular on YouTube. Let's say you don't have a record deal yet, and would you ever advise them not to go with a record deal if they are making enough money off the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Instagrams? Like, what would benefit a band that's getting popular to sign versus not signing?
Well, that's a great question. That is sort of the question of the day right now. Is I would say this: if the artist is big enough on those platforms and making enough money, that's always the factor. It's like, are you guys happy with your living right now? Like,
Right.
your standard of living. Then hold off until the offer gets bigger, right? Hopefully it gets bigger. Hopefully you don't like lose your followers and it gets smaller, right? But I guess the question, what can a label bring? I mean, it still is the case that record labels have been releasing music for 50, 60, 80 years probably, since the 50s at least, right? So yeah, I guess 70 years solid. So they understand that market still better than like TikTok does. Like TikTok is great at understanding TikTok, but
Right.
like selling music and getting it out to people, labels still, if they're a good one, still do that quite well, right? They understand, how to get into people's ears, right? But I think TikTok, if I could predict something, I bet you TikTok will replace a lot of, like, it could become the sort of record label down the road, right? Because it's all about accessing people, right? And
Right.
if you are that platform, then yeah, why, like, you don't have to press records and put them in stores anymore. So, I mean, there's the playlisting part too, I guess, getting on Spotify playlists, but I think there's already one of the biggest Spotify playlists is a TikTok playlist, right? So it's sort of like, yeah, I see that happening more
Crazy.
and more. Yeah.
How important then is radio for as a leverage for these record companies? We'll get you on the radio. Do people care about that anymore?
They still do. Like, I don't know how long that'll last, but like right now, radio is still like, just like if you get on CTV News or on your local newspaper, there's a certain legitimacy about getting in the old school media.
Okay.
Right. It's like, I don't know, like we still, like, our parents are still listening to music and still, in a lot of ways, the boomers still sort of run the world right now to some extent. Right. So like, but once the boomers are gone, then maybe radio won't matter as much. But like, I think there is always, like, people want to tune in locally see what's happening locally. And I think radio still does a good job of that,
Is that ever in the actual record contract though? We're going to promote it to radio or get you on the radio. Can they promise that? Because I know I've been obviously in radio and in the music meetings and stuff, and it's tough. Like, for us to get to actually put a new song on the radio, it goes through a lot of channels. And like, do they use that as leverage though to help?
Yeah, and they can't guarantee anything, right?
Okay.
Like, they can't guarantee anything, but they can say, like, I can speak about One Bad Son's record deal. It's like, we're going to release at least one video and one single, and thankfully they did multiple. Like, each record they did 3, right? Because the first one was successful in each case, right? But yeah, to shop or to push a single from coast to coast to radio, it's like $10,000 or something like that at least, and that's just in rock, right? And when you go to America, like, to get a number one song in America, they say you have to spend at least $1 million in promotion. So like, you can't just have a number one.
What?
So that's where a song starts blowing up on TikTok. And then you say, okay, so are you willing to pay $1 million to go number one on radio? Well, no, but a big major label will, right?
Right. I didn't know it was that much money.
Oh, it's crazy.
Okay.
It's stupid. Like, that's why, like you said, it's so hard to get a new song on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to pick out a positive thing about TikTok and social media. It's like, that's a cool thing, is songs come out of nowhere now and they blow up, and that maybe couldn't happen as much in the old days, right? Like,
Yes.
A great example is Tones and I, right? Like, so I helped do that deal. Like, she started blowing up on social media, and all of a sudden,
Yeah, she's on Ellen and everything. Da da da.
Yeah, so Dance Monkey was like, it was a straight viral success, and
So they say, dance for me, dance for me, dance for me, oh.
her manager reached out to me because he read all my articles on my website, right? And he was like, he was a failed entertainment lawyer, like, to use his own words. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here, mate. He's from Australia. And he's like, I've been reading your articles. Like, would you help? And I was like, sure. And he didn't tell me who she was yet. He just said, I've got a client that's starting to do some things. And I said, okay. And then he kept calling me back. Like, it was kind of like more urgent every time. Like, he called me 3 times in a week. And I was like, what's going on here, man? Who is she? And so he's like, her name's Tones and I. So I looked her up on Spotify, and like the numbers are just like, through the roof. And then, so obviously I'm in Canada, she's in Australia. The deals are all based out of New York. We had a full-on major label bidding war. So all the majors just like were just throwing money and they're throwing these deals at us. And so I was involved, and we also had a US lawyer because the deals are from the US.
Okay.
But I was able to get like, I was able to negotiate when you have that much power as an artist. Like we could basically name her price, and she went from being because she was a busker originally, right? Like she was busking, like she didn't busk like for the fun of it. Like she busked for food. Like she was poor, right? She had nothing. She went from that in a matter of a month. We signed this deal, both a record deal and a publishing deal, and will never have to worry about money again in her life. Like it was just like instant multi-millionaire, right? And
unbelievable.
Yeah, so that's kind of the upshot, I guess, of all the social media is like if a great song really is a great song, I think it'll be discovered these days. Where maybe back in the 80s, 70s, 90s, even like I think a lot of great bands came and went that never got discovered because they signed a bad deal or.
That's a good point. That's a great point, actually. Maybe there was how much music did we miss out on because the internet wasn't around?
And maybe now it gets discovered. You see it happening a bit, right? There's like, I mean, even with like Searching for Sugarman, I don't know if you ever saw that documentary. Like I loved it. It's like
I'll check it out.
Now with internet technology, we can kind of we can tell the stories of the people that never got a real chance back in the day,
Crazy. I have so much to ask you. I'm just going to ask you one more question because I know you have to go. You have kids and you're super busy, and I can't even imagine what you do on a daily basis. One of your articles I was reading, I thought it was so cool. It was cover bands and tribute bands. Are they legal? And I was Are they legal? What are you talking about? And I started reading. I'm like, are these legal or not? Because it's crazy. So there's so many tribute bands in the world. I know a lot of people in tribute bands that rock it every time.
Right.
Do you run into that problem quite often with a tribute band and they're like, no. Oh, we're in trouble. We're getting sued by the big guys. Like, come help us.
No, it doesn't usually come up. Like,
okay.
It's more like, I found it just really fascinating. Like, to tackle the question, right? Cause a couple of buddies asked me, like they're in like a Guns N' Roses tribute, right? And they're like, could GNR actually stop us? And I was like, well, I think they could technically, but like, let me research it. Right. And so, yeah, the answer is yes. Like if Axl wanted to stop every GNR tribute band out there, he probably could, right? Like, wow. Which is kind of crazy. I mean, but would he do it? Well, no, it would cost so much in legal fees, and also he'd make him look like even more of an asshole than he already looks. But you know what I mean? Like, it's cover bands are different because if you do a 30 song cover set,
right,
of all different artists, like you're not sort of appropriating someone's brand, right? An image, right? Yeah. Like it's only if you do a tribute, like if you dress like them and use like their fonts on the poster and play all their songs. I mean, they could argue that, and again, this is an argument, but it'd have to hold up in court. Like if you did that the night before the real Def Leppard came, would it possibly decrease the ticket sales for them? And again, like some of these, like there's some great ABBA tributes that like are so good that like people, like they said, like they make millions as a band, right? So they're so good that, and the real ABBA doesn't tour, but in theory, if the tribute plays on Friday and the real ABBA plays on Saturday, I would say that they're going to decrease the ticket sales for the real ABBA, right? So
and really, tributes have been going on forever. Like Elvis passes away, boom, how many Elvis impersonators are there? Like hundreds and thousands, right? And it's like, it's never not happened, but it really got my interest when I started reading that article, and it was just so cool. You're such a great writer too, like obviously lawyer, right? And
well,
go ahead.
Well, and one thing I'll say is this, like, so on the Elvis topic, like the benefit to you as if you're Elvis, like, or ABBA, is that if bands are playing your songs every night around the world, you actually get paid for that, right? Like they fill out a form that says what songs you performed live, and you get it's like getting a spin on radio, basically, right? Like your songs being performed publicly, just like a radio play. So it's like ABBA makes a ton of money from these tribute bands. Just it's kind of through the back end, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
So imagine the number of Elvis impersonators every night in somewhere in the world. Like in theory, they should be filling out like, and actually the venue does it too. The venue says, we had this guy in tonight. Here's the songs he played. Right. And So anyways, yeah, there's a benefit. You get paid from it eventually as the artist, right? If you're the songwriter.
Didn't know that. How many articles do you put out? Do you try like one a month or a couple of months?
I should do more. I don't know. Well, I'm always like, I wish I had more time in a day, because now I've started doing TikTok videos, but like, I haven't done as many articles, but
right.
It's like, I don't know how many, but a lot of them are written a few years ago, and I've updated them. And,
well, yeah, let's give a shout out to your website, because lawyerdrummer.com, it's awesome. And like, I just feel the more you put out, the more I'm going to read, and the more beneficial to everybody. Like it's a great read, top to bottom. It's all good.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, for me, it's like, my big thing is like, I do it because I want to empower musicians, right? Like I want them to have the knowledge that I didn't have when I started out as a musician, right? Like so they don't get screwed over by a record label or a manager or even a producer. Like sometimes producers say, I'll give you your songs if you give me I'll hand you the songs if you give me like a bunch of songwriting credit and stuff.
No way.
I mean, that makes producers sound sketchy, but there are some sketchy ones out there. It's just
right.
There's some great ones too, right? So,
okay, one last question. What is sound and vision management?
Yeah, so I manage a great producer and a friend of mine, Brian Moncars.
Okay,
and and I might take on other producer clients down the road, and then maybe further down the road, I'll take on some artists. But like right now, I got 3 young kids, and the legal practice is crazy busy, and like managing artists just takes more time, right?
And you're a drummer and one bad son. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So, and basically, anyways, it's my management company. So,
okay,
named it after the great David Bowie song, of course. And yeah, I mean, basically, I manage Brian Moncars, and he's like one of the best producers and mixers in the country. He just finished doing like the Alice Cooper record, and he's just like, he's a super talented guy, but also a great human. So
in your role with that, do you funnel bands to him? Is that your job when you own a management company? I
mean, basically, like manage, just like managing an artist, like you sort of help with everything. But
okay, cool.
But yeah, if I find artists, like send them his way. But also, if he finds artists, I'm the one that negotiates the points or like whatever, what his payment and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's new to me. I've done it for I guess about a year. But
where's he based out of?
He's in Toronto.
Okay, Toronto. Okay.
And yeah, it's like, it's I love it, man. It's a lot of fun. It's, which I don't know if a lot of people would say, like, I love what I do every day. Like to speak, we're talking about cool jobs. It's like,
yeah,
I love being an entertainment lawyer. I love managing, and I love being a musician. Like that's the obvious one, right? Like, of course I love being a musician. That's easy to love, right? Whereas the other stuff, I don't think anyone else, I don't know any other lawyer like me, that's like, in terms of, like I work from home, I work from my laptop. I love what I do, which a lot of lawyers, friends of mine, don't love what they do, but they love the paycheck.
A lot of lawyers I find are just super stressed, right to the hills. And I'm like, why are you doing this then? What's the point?
Yeah. Well,
I get the paycheck. I get the paychecks good.
They make good money. I really, and I'm always super grateful because I know what it's like to not be successful at it, right? Like same with on the musician side, like when I started both, no one cared about me as a musician or as a lawyer, right? Because I was a nobody in both, right? And I had to work my ass on both careers to get where they are. So like, I know what it was like to not have anything. And now it's like every day is like crazy busy, but it doesn't have that stress element that you just mentioned. Like I'm not stressed. There's times that I got to work my ass off, and I guess there's some stress in terms of like just getting caught up, but it's not like there's no negativity, right? It's like, it's helping other people achieve their dreams, whether they're a musician or a label, whatever. Right. And being trusted with that, right? People trust me with their careers, and that's like, it's a real gift,
That's awesome. One Bad Son. I know this is the last question. One Bad Son going to be on the road or touring. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, we're super excited, man. It's like Shane and I realized, like we lost our guitar player. He left, I think, earlier, or like last year. Okay. And it's like we've been with him for 18 years. It's like, do we keep going on? And we just realized that we were not done making music, right? And
Awesome.
the joy of making music it's such a gift. Just I spoke about the other thing as a gift. Like this is a real gift, and we've got such amazing fans, and Shane and I are still friends after all these years, which is a gift, right? And so we're like, let's get a new guitar player, and we have that. Her name's Tara McLeod. She's amazing. And we have a new bass player, Ryan Cooley. He's amazing. And so it's like, you know, you never know how long it'll last, right? Like some bands is always, well, as we talked about at the outset, I mean, like sometimes you lose people, like they just die, or which is horrible, or you just realize the magic isn't there anymore. And that's when bands should stop. And for us, it's like the magic is still there. So I'm going to keep going until it's not there, you know, and hopefully it's not for a long time, right?
So new album or tour first? What's coming?
We're recording a month from now, actually. We're going to do 2 new songs right now. And then we've got some summer festival shows.
Cool.
We've got a show in Red Deer, so that's actually really close to you. You should make the trip.
Yeah. Okay. Let's connect.
Yeah, it'd be great. You should.
We'll do a podcast from Red Deer live.
I'm in, man.
That'd be cool.
But yeah, so like some shows there, and then from there, I mean, and we might be opening. We haven't announced it yet, so this is top secret. We might be opening for another big band in Edmonton on August 2nd or 3rd. So
August 2nd or 3rd. I didn't even look at the calendar yet. Okay, cool, awesome, sweet.
It's at a place called Midway.
Yeah, Midway. Yeah, I know where Midway is.
Is it cool? Okay, yeah. Anyways, so I won't say the band yet, but it'll be awesome. They're Canadian rock legends, I would say.
Cool. I love it. Oh man, Kurt Dahl, lawyer, drummer, lawyer. You have one cool job. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
It was a real honor, Jonny, and it's I feel like we're just getting started, so let's do another one.
I think so. Episode 2, 3, 4, they're all coming with you for sure, buddy. Cool Jobs Podcast is brought to you by Mark Curtis at Crown Jewel Recruitment. With over 200 people hired, Mark Curtis at Crown Jewel Recruitment will find the right person for you. Contact him today, 780-984-8800, or email mark@crownjewelrecruitment.com. Kurt, chat later.
Thank you, Jonny.
The Cool Jobs Podcast is brought to you by Crown Jewel Recruitment. Have a cool job or know someone that does? Let us know. Email Jonny at cooljobspodcast.com.
You got me fiending for